Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Somebody has fired me the question, Zanu PF is the party in power. Why are you criticizing MDC, CCC more than you are criticizing Zanu PF? I think it is a question that must be answered. Some people believe that Zanu PF, because it is the party in power, it is the one responsible for bringing about democratic change. That's why they're mixing the two. Zanu PF is in power and is committed to maintain the status quo. I've said it on this platform and I'll say it again. Zanu PF will never reform itself out of office, not if they can help it. So to say Zanu PF is the party in power, and therefore then they must be the ones leading the reforms to end the Zanu PF dictatorship. It's a contradiction. You're contradicting yourself. Why would Zanu PF implement reforms to end their own power? They will not do that. If you were Zanu PF, you will not do that either. Zanu PF created the present de facto one-party state dictatorship. And it is serving Zanu PF. Zanu PF leaders like Mnangagwa, the late Mugabe, and many others have been committed to the idea that Zanu PF is the party of government. Zanu PF ichatonga kusvika madhonga amere nyanga. And if you seriously don't understand that, then you have a problem. The people of Zimbabwe have not been risking lives, livelihoods, and even lives, human lives, to elect the opposition into power for any other purpose other than that they will be looked at to implement the democratic reforms to dismantle the Zanu PF dictatorship, because Zanu PF would not do it themselves. That has been the number one purpose of the MDC CCC. And therefore it is laughable that anyone 25 years down the line, and for the last 25 years, they have been risking all to elect MDC leaders and CCC leaders into office. Suddenly they decide, no, we are electing them, but they are not the party in government. We expect Zanu PF to implement reforms. That's nonsense. So you find some people, when people like myself have said the 2008 to 2013 GNU was the golden opportunity for Zimbabwe to implement the democratic reforms designed to dismantle the Zanu PF dictatorship. People, why are you saying Chamisa and Tsvangirai are the ones who betrayed during the GNU? Why don't you also blame Mugabe and his Zanu PF leaders? No one in their right mind expected Mugabe and his Zanu PF thugs to implement the reforms. If anything at all, everyone expected them to try to throw the spanner in the works to make sure that no meaningful reforms are implemented. So the task of implementing the reforms reverted to Morgan Tsvangirai and his MDC friends. Why did they fail to implement even one token reform? Well, Mugabe bribed them. He was the state president, and it was within his powers to say the incoming MDC leadership, ministers and deputy ministers, were to be allocated the same E-Class Mercedes-Benz for the ministerial limos. The MDC councillors, MPs, and senators were to be paid the same generous salaries and allowances as the Zanu PF counterparts. And all these other trappings of high office. Mugabe was smart enough to know that if you give MDC leaders the trappings of high office, they will forget the reforms. You can't blame Mugabe for doing that. You've got to blame Morgan Tsvangirai and his friends for failing to stick to their commitment to implement the democratic reforms to ensure elections in future are free, fair, and credible. It is amazing how the same people who are asking, why are you criticizing CCC, MDC, and CCC leaders and not criticizing Zanu PF? They themselves fail to realize that MDC leaders sold out during the GNU. If you are easily bought, bribed, then it's your fault. It's your weakness. Mugabe was only exploiting that weakness. We can't pretend that the MDC leaders did not have that weakness. They did, and Mugabe exploited it. Here is Mnangagwa talking about Zimbabwe's opposition.
I'm happy kuti in Zimbabwe, hakuna friction between the ruling party and the opposition party. But it is critically important that we must have an opposition which must check on the ruling party. So members of the opposition, make sure you deal with the ruling party. Don't make them sit. Make sure you make them busy, the opposition. Somebody get up. Nyanga vakadiri rambai muchingo criticize kuseni masikati criticize. That way, munovabatsira kuti varambe vari mupower. Nokuti vanenge vachidiscover mistakes avo vachikorekta. Ivi muchingorova, nokuti vasi varova vanorelaxa, mozotora power. So my advice for opposition is be serious in opposition. No to murambe muri mu opposition.
Cynical as that may sound, it is
Party and opposition party.
It is fundamentally what we have in Zimbabwe. An opposition that is helping the Zanu PF stay in power. If you understand that the opposition in Zimbabwe is not like the opposition in a country like the UK. In the UK, you've got the ruling party, part of government. At the present moment, it's a Labour Party. And then you've got the opposition, which is the Conservative. The number one task of the opposition in UK is to hold the government of the day to account. That is what the electorate expects of their opposition. They also are expected as the main opposition that could win power to also come up with economic policies that they can say to the electorate, if we were in power, this is what we'll do, and to improve the situation. In Zimbabwe, the number one purpose of the opposition is to implement the democratic reforms, to dismantle the de facto one-party state that is operating in Zimbabwe. The clever thing that Mugabe did during the GNU was to realize that the days of the de facto one-party state were over. What he needed to do is create a situation where Zanu PF kept its carte blanche dictatorial powers, and yet keep an opposition that it can show to the world and to the rest of the country that yes, you've got the opposition here, your alternative voices are represented. And in this case here, we can assume that the opposition will one day assume power. Whereas in reality in Zimbabwe, the political situation is such that the opposition has been so weakened, they do not aspire to rule. They only aspire to have the few gravy train seats that Zanu PF let them have. The opposition in Zimbabwe aspire to remain the opposition, Zimbabwe's main opposition. They never aspire to rule. For the people, they are conned into believing that the opposition, with the present political system, they can still win power. This is why Chamisa was telling the people in 2023 that CCC was going to win big because I've plugged all the vote rigging loopholes. He knew he had not plugged any of those vote rigging loopholes. He knew Zanu PF was rigging those elections. He knew Zanu PF would emerge as the government in power. All he was aspiring for is that CCC would win those few seats, particularly in the urban centers, that Zanu PF has always allowed, ever since the GNU, the opposition to win, so that it can maintain this facade that Zimbabwe is a healthy and functioning multi-party democracy. The people have got to make that quantum leap. MDC CCC had the opportunity to implement the reforms during the GNU. They failed to do so. And ever since, they've been participating in flawed elections, knowing fully well that the process is flawed, knowing fully well that their participation will only give Zanu PF legitimacy. And they were quite happy with that. When they participate, they cannot tell the people that they are participating out of greed to win the few gravy train seats that Zanu PF allows them. They have to tell their supporters, we are going to win and be the government, the next government in power. After 25 years, without even one token reform implemented, the people themselves should be smart enough to realize that they are being taken for a ride. Chamisa and company are never going to implement any reforms. Zanu PF knows that. And they're quite happy with the present arrangement. The criticism of MDC CCC is focused on they failed to deliver on the number one primary task that the people of Zimbabwe expect them to deliver, i.e., implement the democratic reforms to ensure free, fair, and credible elections. Chamisa and company have given up on reforms. They are now telling people they can win rigged elections when they know that too is a lie. Things are not always as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. And I think that's where some of our people fail themselves. If before the 2008 GNU, it was a clear cut of we must implement the democratic reforms to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. Ever since the GNU, the situation has changed. The opposition have come up with another theory that they can win rigged elections. Since 2013, the nation has been called to participate in these elections, repeatedly assured that the opposition would win, only for Zanu PF to blatantly rig the elections. The challenge is, are the people smart enough to realize that Zanu PF and the MDC CCC opposition are now partners? They pretend to fight to give the impression that the opposition is a serious challenge, when in reality, they are now working together. as Mnangagwa boasted on this occasion, there is no friction between Zanu PF and MDC CCC. Indeed, MDC CCC leaders, as Zanu PF Team B in all but name, they've been participating in these flawed elections, making sure that Team A wins and Team A has legitimacy. The challenge is the people themselves. Are you smart enough to realize that you are being taken for a ride? Think about it. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.